Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another breakfast with Blaha, and having Greek yogurt, frozen blueberries, almond butter. All right, we need to talk about realistic expectations of muscle growth and bulking, because one of the big problems I see, and I get this a lot, because I would say right now my demographics have shifted a little bit around with my coaching, and I would say right now I have about a third of my clients are what I would classify, me personally, as skinny novices. Now, some people be like, wait, if they're doing sets of 5 on the box squat with 225, are they still novices? Yeah, some of them are. Even though they might have a little bit of a strength base, a lot of them are still novices. And one of the things I've noticed is that younger lifters oftentimes have unrealistic expectations of how much muscle they're going to gain, and they really think things like, well, you're saying I need to bulk to gain muscle, so I should look like I lift in about 6 months. And this will be coming from someone who's not lean. And it's like, no, you're not going to look like you lifted 6 months. Muscle growth's a slow process. Okay, it's a slow process. And again, other coaches I know, we discuss this all the time. It's one I discuss all the time, even in groups and stuff, with Alan Bacon. We're friends. He owns Maui Athletics. And he also runs one of the biggest meme pages on Facebook for fitness memes. But we talk about this a lot, and he'll tell you the same thing, even though he's slightly more geared towards bodybuilding in his own training, even he coaches strength also. And he'll say the same things, like most of these kids need to bulk for 2 years straight. 2 years straight. And this is coming from a medical doctor. And I agree with this. You know, and a lot of these kids are like, well, I don't want to get too fat. And it's like, well, what are you going to cut to? If you're worried about that, then you need to go ahead and cut before you get serious about training, right? Go before you start lifting, maybe go get lean, do a bunch of cardio, work on your conditioning, get your body weight down, get down to a lean athletic body fat, and then worry about gaining muscle. But you're not going to do both. You're not going to look like you lift thin either. And I get that. If you're starting out too fat and you need to drop some body weight, you could do so early on. But once you do that, there is no bulking and cutting back and forth all the time for a new lifter. Right? Because if you do, you're never going to get anywhere. You have to commit to building a base. And being realistic here, it takes about 2 years to do that. 2 years. And if you cut in between, you're basically going to cut down to nothing. And a lot of these guys, they'll say, well, I'll see guys all the time, well, I want to get leaner. I want to get ripped. I'm like, but you do know you're not going to look like a lifter, right? I'm like, what? Like, but my muscles will show more. No, that you don't have any muscle. And I think a lot of these guys don't realize how small they are going to be after a cut. And I mean, a worst case, I've got a client like that right now. He started kind of skinny fat and started lifting, bulked for just a little bit, and then said, hey, I want to get ripped. This is before he hired me. He started cutting, he dropped 20 pounds, and he still wasn't ripped. He's like, I guess I better lose more weight. He dropped all the way down to 140. 140 pounds is a guy who's like 5'10". You guys think he looks like? You guys think he looks buff? Or do you think he looks like a guy, even he wasted a year of his life doing this? A year doing all of this before he came on. He looks like a guy who has never set foot in a gym in his life. He just looks like a really, 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 really skinny guy with no muscle, and he has no strength. That's why he hired a coach. He realized, wow, this didn't go very well. I really messed up. I spent a whole year of my life to be 140 pounds and look like I've never touched a weight. And keeping in mind, it's a guy who can bench 100 pounds for a few reps, because he lost any muscle that he had. And he still didn't get ripped. He just got skinny. And these kids forget that. They're unrealistic about how long it takes muscle, and they're unrealistic about how much muscle they have under the fat. And I think people see that too often. They'll see a bigger, like a heavier power lifter, or a guy who bulked for years and years and got a little sloppy. They'll see that guy go on a serious cut, and then afterwards like, oh man, that guy made this amazing transformation. But it's like he already had 30 pounds of muscle gain over where he started from lifting. 35 pounds. And then he cut down and trimmed off the fat. But you got to look at that and tell some of these younger guys, how long do you think it takes to build 30 pounds of real muscle? Do you really think you're going to do that in 2 years? No. So even if you bulk for 2 years, you're not putting on 30 pounds of muscle when you cut back down. It's not going to be there. If you did a really, really, really good job, it's going to be 20. Like if you did everything perfect, and I'm not talking about tall guys. Tall guys are their own rules. If you did everything perfect, it's going to be 20. You repeat this process again, it's going to be 5 more. But if you have not built a serious base and put in the real time to put on quality muscle tissue and you cut, there's going to be nothing to cut to. And the same thing for more advanced guys bulking. You know, they come in and they say, oh man, I'm going to gain a bunch of muscle. It's like, well, how much muscle do you think you're going to gain? You're going to have to bulk. Don't get me wrong. Advanced guys will have to bulk and cut. In fact, that's almost impossible to recomp without drugs when you're advanced, or with drugs that you've been using that same stack for a while. In recomp, you got to up the dose. So they'll do the same thing. They'll gain a bunch of muscle. Not really. For me, with my advanced lifters, if we do a 10-pound bulk over the course of a year, 10, 12 pounds, say we put on a pound a month, our goal is to put 2 pounds of muscle tissue on. 3. And they'll trim the fat. Right? They'll bulk and then they'll cut. But if we do that, that's very successful, right? I'm going to do that with one of my guys now. Advanced lifter, slightly shorter. You know, we put on like 10 to 12 pounds. We did it in a year. But he went from a 450 squat to a 500. He went from a low 500s deadlift to a 565. He had like a 295 or so bench. He got to a 315. Right? We put on a couple pounds of muscle there, and that's what his numbers did. Now he's cutting again. And he went up to 180. We're going to cut him down to 170. And then we're going to repeat the process. Right? 10-pound bulks for these guys. But we're doing this oftentimes hoping, can I gain 1 or 2 pounds of muscle for an advanced lifter? And if they can do that, that is a great success. But people have to be realistic about this stuff. Gaining muscle is a very, very, very slow process. And people get these unrealistic ideas. And social media is to blame. I'm not going to name names, but you guys can think of some of them. You'll see these guys, these kids who have really good genetics, right? They'll train hard. They'll train correctly. I've seen some of them who do. They'll build a base, and then all of a sudden in 3 years, they look like, you know, they have a good physique and a good strength base. Anyone who understands muscle growth knows exactly what happened. You're telling me this kid bulked up, and he now squats 450, benches 330, right? Deadlifts 550, and is it 10% body fat now? He dieted down after that? 3 years, right? That's big old 3D delts, muscle fullness, almost that muscle maturity look. I can tell you he went on gear for the start of that second year. He blasted hard for years 2 and 3. And he probably had good genetics on top of it. Right? Because guys who go on stuff don't look like that after 3 years without good genetics too. Average Joe won't pull it off. They won't look like that guy. That's reality. Hey, muscle growth is a slow process. And the longer you train, the slower it becomes. And you have to accept that. And what people have to remember is this is about the journey. It's about the journey, not the destination. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.